Welcome to Connecting to the Windy City. My name is Joni Spain. I'm a career advisor in the Jacobs School of Music, Office of Entrepreneurship and Career Development. We're delighted today to partner with the Chicago chapter of the IU Alumni Association and the Jacobs Alumni Relations to bring you this informative session. If you're living in Chicago, interested in making the jump to Chicago to start your career in performance or arts administration, or you're just curious about the Chicago scene, today's event is for you. I'd like to welcome now our good friend, Bob Nolan, president of the Chicago chapter of the IU Alumni Association. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Joni. Thanks for having me, and good afternoon to everybody. Very happy to be involved in talking about the IU Alumni Association. So I'm a 1987 grad of IU Bloomington with a degree in health and safety from what was then the School of Hyper and now the School of Public Health. The IU chapter of the Chicago chapter of the IU Alumni Association has over 37,000 members. We're the largest chapter community of the Alumni Association outside of the state of Indiana, and there are tons of opportunities for alumni to be involved with our chapter. We try to provide opportunities to connect, engage, and support our alumni in a variety of ways. We have a 16-member board made up of 8 different committees that put on events throughout the year to help to find ways to connect and engage our alumni. We have a social committee, a community service committee, our athletics committee, professional development, arts and culture, 2 geographic specific committees, one for the northwest suburbs, one for the western suburbs, which is where we have large concentrations of alumni. And then we also have a newly developed scholarship committee. Our scholarship program, we give out 2 scholarships each year to Chicago area students. One is traditionally an incoming freshman, and the second scholarship is generally reserved for somebody who's already enrolled on one of the IU campuses across the state of Indiana. So we put on things like game watches, social events, professional networking events. I mentioned our scholarships. Because of the coronavirus right now, we've been kind of hunkered down doing more planning. We're looking to do more virtual events, kind of like this. We're putting together a business guide to help support IU-owned and connected businesses and help to give some visibility to our alumni for those kinds of businesses. So we're always looking to engage and involve new alumni. We're looking to welcome new alums to the Chicago area. So if anyone is ever interested in getting more involved, either on one of our committees or as a member of our board, please feel free to reach out. I've put some information in the group chat about how to connect with us through Zoom, through Facebook, through Twitter, and through our chapter-specific email address. So happy to hear from you. And now I'd like to introduce one of our board members and one of the co-chairs of our community service committee, Maddie Chervitz. Maddie's very active with the chapter, does a great job for us, and is also a healthcare recruiter with Lurie Children's Hospital here in Chicago. So I'll turn it over to Maddie.
Thank you, Bob, for that introduction. And I also want to thank Joni for inviting me to speak with you all today on the important topic of job search strategies and working with a recruiter, not only during this kind of strange time in our lives, but in general. So hopefully you'll get some good information out of this today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for the presentation. Okay. Can you see it?
Yep, looks
Thumbs
good.
up. Great.
Yep.
All right. So as Bob had mentioned, well, first off, before introducing myself, I want to congratulate the recent grads of Indiana University. That's a huge accomplishment. I know doesn't necessarily look the way you may have expected, but such a great accomplishment to have under your belt. And we're excited to have you either here currently in Chicago or considering moving to the area. So about me, my name's Maddie Chervitz. I was also a graduate of the formerly Hyper, now School of Public Health, 2014, with a degree in exercise science. Some involvement while I was on campus. I was a part of the Greek life. My senior year was able to be a recruitment counselor and help students through the recruitment process. I was also very involved with Indiana University Dance Marathon, a passion of mine. I know that is less than 100 days away. So some of my involvement on campus. I was born and raised in the Midwest from St. Louis, Missouri. And my first job out of school was back home in St. Louis at a physical therapy office as a physical therapy tech. I had thought about going to further my education in physical therapy, had a great year at home working there and a couple of odd jobs, retail, working the front desk at a gym, and coaching rock climbing. After doing that, I realized that I did want to get into the professional world, find myself a career home, and I wanted to do that in Chicago. So I made the move to Chicago, knew there was a lot of Indiana University graduates here, and it would be a great place to come and be able to network and establish myself as a professional. So my current job, I started here as an agency recruiter, wasn't sure what recruitment was. I was researching, found out about it, and thought that my background would lend nicely to that type of role. So I started out working as an agency recruiter. And then currently I am working, as Bob had mentioned, at Ann and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago as a recruiter. And I had actually been placed in this position by an agency recruiter. So kind of came full circle there. And I'm also on the Chicago chapter. I'm the co-chair of the community service committee on the IUAA Chicago chapter, and it has been great work that we're doing, and we look forward to continuing events this year, more so in a virtual format, and hopefully next year or after November back in person. All right, next slide. So let's get right into it. So what does the Chicago job market look like right now? Well, as of last month, there were a little over 148,000 openings, according to a report done by Glassdoor, which is slightly down from where we were last year in July, which was just under 193,000 job openings. So there still are, people are hiring here now. The industries of which are hiring may look a little bit different based on our current reality. However, since we've been a couple of months into this, businesses are starting to learn what this new normal is and understand how they can get back to operating and conducting business. So certain industries like customer service have been on the rise, logistics on the rise, restaurants and hospitality, catering, those are going to probably be a little bit slower to return back to normal, but nonetheless, restaurants are open, people are dining in at, of course, their own comfort. So again, while there are certain companies that may still be under hiring freezes, there is still a lot of opportunity here. So if that's one of the decisions as far as you're considering that, if you should move because of how the job market looks and are unsure, I wouldn't have that hold you up. It's a great place to be. Chicago is, especially at this time of year. And also too, during this time, I think it's great because there's the opportunity to pick up new skill sets. So maybe industries that are hiring, you'll be able to use your skills in a variety of different ways. So again, virtual events, learning how to be involved in a Zoom call and things like that. So we'll see a lot more virtual events happening. So as far as how to structure your job search, First, I would really invite you to evaluate what is important to you when considering a position or a company. So if you are looking to, say, balance a position outside of performing arts, you want to make sure that you probably have something flexible, because you'll be balancing that with practice time, with auditions. So that would probably be something you'd rank at the top. But again, evaluating this on how it ranks for you. Pay and commute are also important to think about. Commute is a big thing, being in Chicago, being close to public trans, or just something that you'd want to think about. And also, considering roles and financial stability. Maybe it's not exactly a role that you see yourself in forever, or your dream job, but again, great experience. Every experience, you're learning something new. And then you'll want to make sure to research the companies, of course. So what are their mission and vision? What are their values? Does that align with your values? Are they a stable company? How are they treating their employees? How do they normally treat their employees, but how now are they treating their employees given these uncertain times that are continuing on? So just making sure to research into that, evaluate that, because you could be an employee there one day and you want to be valued and respected and know that they're treating their employees well, if that can one day be you. All right, so continuing on with how to structure your job search, you're going to want to update your resume. This may already be done, but just a friendly reminder, when applying to positions, you'll want to have different versions of your resume tailored to the role specifically. So you can take a look at the job description, pull out keywords that are relevant to your experience that you're seeing in the job description. Again, to show why you would be a good qualified applicant for the position. If you're applying through an applicant tracking system internally, so directly through the company, you'll want to make sure that your format is either Word or PDF, so that that can successfully get through and be viewed by a recruiter without any compatibility issues there. And then lastly, you'll apply like the cat is doing on the keyboard. You'll just apply, apply, apply. If your qualifications are a 75% match to the job requirements, and it's a position that sounds like it would be of interest to you, go ahead and apply. Make sure you have all the materials that you need at the time of application. And then if possible, if you have a contact, say you have a recruiter's contact or a hiring manager's contact, or maybe you know someone at the company, follow up with them and let them know that you put in the application, and again, that you're really excited about the opportunity and hope to hear from the company soon. Let's see. Okay. Next, LinkedIn. I'm curious to know, I feel like LinkedIn is a very popular platform. Most people that I speak with do have a LinkedIn. So I'm curious to know, who here has a LinkedIn. You can chat in if you do or you don't. If not, I would recommend checking out the website and creating a profile. It is a great place to show off your professional accomplishments, and your personality, and you can really build that personal brand to put on display. It is a great tool to research companies and follow influencers in your field, and keep up to date with company news. And also, it's a great tool for finding alumni of IU that are specifically in Chicago, but also across the country. So there's a great tool on LinkedIn. I have the link here and I'll send it in the chat after, but this will take you to a page where you can search through alumni at Bloomington, and you can search by location, by industry. So say you're looking to apply to a certain company, and you can then see if there's an alumni who currently works there that you could reach out to, connect with, and pick their brain about how has their experience been there. Again, as Bob had mentioned, we are the second largest hub for IU grads outside of the state of Indiana. So a great place to be as an IU grad and really to utilize your network to help you grow your professional career. Next. So why work with a staffing agency recruiter? Well, first I wanted to tell you what a staffing agency is in case this is something that's unfamiliar. When I was a new grad, this was new to me. But a staffing agency can help match candidates to jobs and have access to many different jobs. This should be at no cost to you. Whenever an agency recruiter does place you is when the company would then compensate the agency, but no cost to you. There are temporary positions, generally flexible positions if you're looking for something for a short time. Recruiters with agencies have, they're great resources. They can give tips and tricks on resume writing. They can help you with interview skills. They really are your cheerleader and personal job coach because they want you. They want to place you. They want to get you the job and for you to be successful. There are many different agencies that are out there. So I would say doing your research on the agencies and making sure that you're finding a good fit for you. Also, different agencies have different relationships with different companies and different industries. So again, doing that research, making sure you're finding the right fit. And it is okay to engage with multiple different agencies and recruiters, just making sure that you're being transparent in your communication. If you have upcoming auditions or you have a potential offer through another agency, just be transparent with them. Again, they want to help you. They want to get you the job. And having those open lines of communication is really key. Again, it's nice versus just sometimes sending your application into a company website. They have that established relationship with the company and with hiring managers, and they're able, a part of their job is to be able to market you and to the hiring managers and why you would be good for that role. So it's a really great tool. As I had mentioned, my current role I had found through an agency, which was great. I had, of course, known about Lurie and would consider the position my dream job, but know that sometimes sending in an application, it can be going into the black hole. Lots of people applying for positions. The recruiter gets your information right there in front of the manager. So a really great tool. And again, it's a good way to find temporary work. If you're looking for something just to have a source of income for a few months and pick up some skills, it's great for that temporary work. 3 months, each contract is different. It could be 3 months, a week or so, depending on the needs of the organization. But it's great to, again, take those types of roles as a source of income, but also you never know who you'll meet in those roles and how that can help you further your career in the future and just help you in developing your professional brand. So in closing, a couple of commonly asked questions and additional information. So should I move to Chicago now? Well, if we were to ask this question in normal times, of course, absolutely. This is the time, at least if I made the move about 5 years ago, and it's a great place to be, especially this time of year. Moving in the summer/fall time, it's a great place to be. Even considering how our current reality is right now, I think that if it is the right move for you, that would be your decision. But It was a great move for me, and I would recommend it to anyone who is interested in coming to the area. Chicago is a great city. And as far as good neighborhoods to consider living in, I would suggest thinking about where it is what companies are you targeting, are you wanting to work with or have gigs with? There are certain neighborhoods that are close to that where you can maybe get there on foot, or that, so for instance, Old Town Lincoln Park area is really close to Second City. So that could be a good area there. There are other theaters in the area. Some common, I would say, neighborhoods that I would recommend that tend to be for newer grads or just are close to the center of the city and easy to get around the city from are Lincoln Park, Old Town, the Loop, West Loop, Lakeview, Edgewater are all great neighborhoods. Also, just tap into your network. I'm sure that if you know someone who graduated from IU and lives here, or didn't graduate from IU and lives here, just ask them where they are. Do they like where they live? Would they recommend it? Those are some neighborhoods that I would recommend, though. And then how do I network in the city during quarantine? Besides the in-person grabbing a coffee, reaching out to someone, grabbing a coffee, you could still do that at your comfort. Obviously, bigger conferences and events aren't happening right now, but that shouldn't keep you from connecting with alumni. So again, LinkedIn, I think, is a great tool to play around with the alumni tool, see who's here, reach out, and always have an ask. If you're reaching out to someone, what is your goal? What is it that you would want from them? Can they introduce you to someone? Is it that you ask to meet for a coffee, or do maybe a FaceTime or a Zoom just to hear about their story and see if they have any recommendations for you? So luckily with technology, you're able to continue networking. And then as far as the rental market, I included some information from one of my close colleagues who was also an IU graduate and is in the real estate market. So she had mentioned that the rental market has softened a little bit. But again, this seems to be a hot time to move, and there is generally inventory available. I did want to go back really quickly to this slide and agencies. So I was going to throw out a couple of names of common agencies. Again, if you haven't researched them and you want to take note of looking into them, some staffing agencies. So the agency that I worked with and was placed through was Advanced Resources, which was great. Beacon Hill is a big one across the nation. And I know an IU alum with the New York chapter who did a similar presentation. She works with Beacon Hill. So they'd be a great resource. LaSalle Network is here, one to look into. Robert Half is a common name, and same with K-Force. So just some ideas of places to start as far as researching agencies. So hopefully that was some helpful information for you to take in and to consider with your job search and looking for work alongside growing your career in the performing arts here in Chicago. There is a chat function. So if you do have questions for me, please feel free to type them in the chat and I will respond to you directly, answering your questions to the best of my ability. And hope to see you all here in Chicago soon, and wish you the best of luck with everything to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maddie. That was great, really helpful. We really appreciate it. Bob and Maddie will both stay on the call. So if you have specific questions for them, please type that in the chat. And now we're going to kick things to our Jacobs panel and IU alumni panel to talk about their career experiences in Chicago and give you some tips and pointers. I'll let them introduce themselves, and we'll start with Brant.
Wonderful. Thanks, Joni. And hello, everybody. My name is Brant Taylor, and I am a cellist in the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, as well as being on the faculty of DePaul University's School of Music. I've lived in Chicago for 22 years now, so roughly during the Paleolithic era. Going back just a bit, my Bachelor of Music degree is from the Eastman School of Music, and my Master's of Music is from IU. I went to IU specifically to study with Janos Starker, who was one of the more legendary performers and pedagogues in the cello world. He was on the IU faculty for more than 50 years. Chamber music is my first love, and that's the direction I thought my career was going when I left school. Full-time chamber music, however, is not the easiest living to make. So after a few years, I found myself a former string quartet cellist, unexpectedly looking for the first time at other possibilities, including auditioning for orchestras. This situation actually helps illustrate one of the points I could make for you today, which is planning ahead is, of course, useful and necessary to some extent. But if you try to plan too far ahead or too specifically, you're likely to be wrong about something. So we also need to plan to be flexible. In my case, luckily some opportunities came my way. I was briefly in the New World Symphony in Miami. Then I won a position with the St. Louis Symphony. And after one season there, I moved to Chicago to join the CSO. I realized moving to Chicago for a job with the CSO meant certain things were in place for me immediately that wouldn't necessarily be for somebody beginning here without that. But however, I knew even before I moved that a complete artistic life for me here needed to involve different things, solo playing, chamber music, and teaching, much of which would not be provided by the CSO and orchestra life. So despite the privilege of joining one of the city's great cultural institutions, I still needed to imagine and kind of actively cultivate the artistic life I knew that I wanted. I do consider myself lucky to have ended up in perhaps the city that I would have chosen for myself if I had the choice way back when. It's certainly a place that offers many avenues for success and satisfaction, whether you're primarily interested in music performance or other aspects of the field. My personal perspective is, of course, as a performer and a teacher, but I know the basic principles for success would ring true across many segments of the profession. As far as tips and strategies I could offer preliminarily, maybe remember the dichotomy I mentioned earlier, which is planning the future to some degree, but being nimble and improvising when your planning needs to be adjusted. I think we all know that adaptability and versatility are talked about right now as the qualities necessary in our field in the 21st century, but it's still useful to know yourself and to know what you most like to do if the choice was yours. I think starting with those, an analysis of your real passions and your skills means you can prioritize according to those ideals and direct your energy and set your goals accordingly. On the other hand, none of that planning is incompatible with staying open to pretty much anything that comes up, even possibilities that you hadn't previously considered. Of course, you don't have to say yes to anything that doesn't seem like a good use of your time, but there isn't much to be gained from having an overly narrow view of what your life in music could be. So I'd encourage you to take every opportunity to learn what's going on artistically in Chicago. Maybe let's state a couple of truths out loud. Particularly at first, you may not be in a position to pick and choose what you say yes to, or you may not feel that way. Not everything will be equally satisfying artistically. Some things are mainly satisfying financially, which is not unimportant. Perhaps you might offer to do certain things for reduced fees or even to donate your services if you know that doing so might put you in proximity to people who might be able to help you in some way. And this actually touches on one of the most important points I'd like to make today, which is it's hard to overstate the importance of relationship building. both with your musical colleagues, as well as audience members, board members, administrators, others behind the scenes that you'll come in contact with. I'd say that that aspect of your new life can determine as much as anything else what opportunities start to come your way over time. Other musicians will obviously notice what you do and what kind of game you have if you're performing, but beyond that, you never know who might be in a position to remember you down the road for some important opportunity. And for this reason, prioritize doing the very best you can all the time, even in situations that might feel a little bit beneath your ability. Building relationships doesn't have to feel strained or forced. I think we all know that the best relationships, whether they're professional or friendships, just come about and evolve naturally. If orchestra is your thing, besides the CSO and the Lyric Opera, there are at least half a dozen others that are played in by many people that pay per service, some in the city, in the suburbs, and some within a couple of hours drive. There are many music schools in town at every level, including some really fine community music schools, including at least one whose primary focus is not classical music. So if you're thinking creatively, besides the obvious opportunities to teach, these venues might be interested in having you play a recital or give a master class, or even approach them with some new project or collaboration that you've been dreaming of. Maddie mentioned it already, and it seems obvious, but if you already know people living here, both musicians and not, definitely let them know you're here. If you're part of a gigging chamber music group, if you play an instrument that's in a string quartet or a brass quintet, find kindred spirits and form that group. If you have skills beyond being a whiz at your instrument, think of ways to use those. Organization and business, computer software, marketing and PR, all of that can only make you more multifaceted and ready for whatever might come your way while you're here. So without talking specifically about every career avenue in town, I hope I'm making it obvious that sort of your own level of openness and creative thinking are really the major determining factors, or at least a couple of them. Some of us can feel a bit self-conscious with the various forms of self-promotion. I know that I did or have, and sometimes it feels like lonely work, but I think all of us can find ways that feel natural to us and do it sort of knowing that those efforts will bear fruit over time. And maybe one last point, speaking of time, I'd say maybe the one challenge that everyone faces at some point building a career in a new city, including Chicago, is that some things simply take time. Auditioning for an orchestra might get you a job immediately based on your playing, but more often it takes time to build relationships and become known enough to be asked to do things. And then if you do a great job, to be asked again. So if you come in already accepting that there may be difficult moments that demand real patience on your part, then you'll be better prepared to persist and weather those challenges. So with my colleagues on the panel today, I look forward to helping answer any specific questions you have, and I'm happy you're considering moving to Chicago, or maybe you already have. It's been an absolutely wonderful place for me, both musically and otherwise, for over 20 years, and I hope that the vibrant cultural and art scene here will also allow you to realize your artistic ambitions.
Thank you, Brant. Brant already brought it up, but please feel free to put questions into the chat at any time. And this session is for you. So we're keeping it casual and not super structured. So this discussion is going to be driven by what questions you have. So drop anything in the chat and we'll make sure that our panelists can address it for you. Charles, would love to meet you.
Hey everyone, I'm Charles Palis. I'm a major gifts officer with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. I've been with the symphony since the beginning of 2018. Academically, my background is in violin performance. I went to Ithaca College and graduated in 2010 with a bachelor's of music degree. And then I immediately went on to IU's SPIA school, and I received a master's in arts administration degree from there. So that was in 2012 when I received that master's. So I've been working at the Symphony for about 3 years now, and just a little explanation of what I do. I work with a portfolio of individual donors that support the Symphony to encourage their ongoing and continued support, as well as provide them opportunities to grow their giving, primarily through the sponsorship of concerts, events, and our educational programs that we do through our Negaunee Music Institute. Before that, I worked for about 3 years at a fundraising consultancy company called CCS. And I got my start full-time working in arts administration at a small nonprofit called Sadie Records, which is a nonprofit classical record label located up here on the north side of Chicago. I did an internship with the Chicago Chamber Musicians right before that. And I'm just rambling on, but let me speak a little bit about, well, I'm going to speak primarily about working in arts administration and how you go about making that decision and how you be successful in that. And first, I would just say that the Master's in Arts Administration at SPIA program is terrific. It sets you up for success, providing you all the fundamental skills and competencies that are required to get started and in arts administration and take off quite quickly. So a full endorsement of that. So if you're seriously considering a career in arts administration, I'll look into that program. I fully endorse it. It was wonderful. And I think a lot of what I have to say echoes Brant's comments, which he said so eloquently. Number one, build your network. I can say that, you know, it begins with your colleagues at the Jacobs School, the faculty, the administration, the staff. That's your core group that you're going to be leaving school with. And then, you know, building a network, like Brant said, it can be a little, feel a little icky at times, but as you get into the groove, it becomes much easier. And one thing I would say is, you know, when things get back to normal, I would suggest going to as many concerts and events that you can afford and that you have time to, especially at the smaller venues throughout the city. You know, you have the opportunity to meet folks, meet the performers, meet the conductor after the concert, congratulate them for a wonderful performance and introduce yourself. You know, if you have time for, you know, your elevator speech, what have you, it's a good time to do it. Just get on someone's radar, make sure that they know that you're there in the city, looking to gig or to perhaps get into arts administration. So I think concerts and events is how I've built a lot of my network in the city when it comes to the arts world. And to Brant's point about opportunities, I would echo that saying yes to something, even if it's not exactly what you're looking to do, is the right move. You know, I don't want to get into the debate about whether you should, you know, play for experience, but if an opportunity comes along, oftentimes, you know, you'll find that people will see that you're reliable, you play well, and that they'll consider you for something in the future, or they may know someone that has an opportunity for you. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, so it'll open doors and windows for you in the arts world here in Chicago. It's a small community. You'll build a reputation quickly, I think. So many people know each other. They work with each other over and over again, and you've got to find a way to work your way into that network. Another thing that's been successful for me, especially starting out, was finding a mentor. You can do that either through a formal program in the city or you know, informally through someone that you meet that's walked in your shoes and knows what you're going through and can be a resource, you know, a sounding board, again, can introduce you to their network and provide you advice along the way. I personally started my mentee-mentor relationship through the Association of Fundraising Professionals Chicago chapter, and I've maintained that relationship throughout my entire career thus far. I can't say enough about finding a mentor that will help you along the way. Those are my tips, and a couple don'ts that I would really recommend when you're applying for jobs, especially. Your cover letter and resume are so important. If you don't know the person that is reviewing or screening your materials in advance, this is their first impression of you. So typos, grammatical errors, unprofessional look, that's what they're basing their impression of you on. So it's really important that those materials are in the best condition that you can make them, because if you find a few gross errors, you're going to go directly into the decline pile. That being said, resilience is so important. You're going to hear no sometimes, which is not, it's not a bad thing. It means that you're out there, you're looking, but you can't. What's that Michael Scott quote? Or is it Wayne Gretzky? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So just be out there, be open, and things will start coming your way.
Thank you, Charles. Elena Escudero's in the house.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me? Cool. Hi, I'm Elena Escudero. I am a recent graduate of Jacobs School of Music. Graduated in 2019. I transferred there, so I had 3 beautiful years at IU. Studied with Lee Wilder, Tierney Sutton, and Satchel Vasandani. We had a different vocal jazz teacher every year because the program is still developing. And for me, that was fantastic because I got taste of a bunch of different techniques, pedagogical techniques. So yeah, I graduated a year ago and then moved here. I've been in Chicago for an entire year now, and it's been wonderful. I love Chicago. I don't know, Brandon Charles really said so many things that resonated with me too. Just like leaning on my network was like one of the reasons I decided to come to Chicago was because of the network I already had here. And just hitting them up, being like, where do I go? Like, what do I do? What neighborhood should I live in? That was things I reached out to them for. And then when I first got here, I just researched a bunch, like all of the venues that I wanted to, like, I saw myself performing in one day. Like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So like, I went to all of the beautiful jazz spots. I'm a jazz singer, sorry I didn't mention that. That there were, jazz sessions at, jam sessions at. Those are great places to meet people. Really just by going, you don't even necessarily have to play, just hang out and, talk to people. Really missed the big jazz festivals that usually go on in Chicago in the summer. But those were fantastic for me, just like hanging around after and seeing if I could talk to anyone. Go to all of the performances you can, definitely, and just hang around and like see if you can talk to people. Another thing for me, I found I had to diversify a lot, like dig a lot more into like pedagogy and tech, like audio recording. I didn't have a lot of personal experience with that. So learning how to do that has opened up a lot of things for me. But yeah, pretty brief because I've only been here a year. But I'd love to answer any questions that any of you have. So.
Thanks, Elena. And now I'm just delighted to introduce for recent grads or maybe upperclassmen, you might recognize Hannah Fiddler. We're delighted to jam with her on her performance name of Lynn Rye. And so we love her performance identity. So I'm so happy to introduce Lynn.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much to everyone who's spoken today already. I'm really trying to reflect on what I can add since there's been so many wonderful things already said that I would echo and reiterate. I graduated from the Jacobs School, from the Jazz Studies, from the Jazz Department in 2017. So I've been in Chicago for about 3 years. I'm a bass player. I'm also a vocalist and a composer. And in Chicago, I have really definitely thrown myself at the whole idea of diversify, be as versatile and adaptable as you can as a musician. I consider myself a serial collaborator with Chicago is such a cross-genre town. And I am in relationship with musicians from so many different genres, and I'm asked to collaborate in so many different genres and so many different scenes. And that is such a great joy and one of the things that is most rewarding to me about Chicago. I also in particular feel that my community life and my musical life are completely inextricable from one another in Chicago. And I was developing connections in Chicago for about a year before I decided to move there. I was going up to perform actually about once a month in Chicago, as well as connections that I had through community organizing and abolitionist networks in the Midwest. I think one thing I can just say is an anecdote that I think sums up what my life in Chicago has been like and all the different elements that piece it together. And all the things you don't think about that lead you to landing a certain opportunity. So when I was at the Jacobs School, I participated in a student project called the Liberation Music Collective, and one of the professors that was a mentor to that project connected us with a journalist in Chicago who wrote about our project while we were doing it. And as I was thinking about going to Chicago, I tried to maintain a good relationship with that journalist in Chicago and met him for the first time, some of the times that I was going up to Chicago. And after a while of me living in Chicago and keeping up this relationship, he was sitting on a train next to a stranger who just happened to be a violinist in this group called the Salam Shalom Music Project. And they just struck up a conversation out of the blue. And this violinist confessed that this group, which is a group of Muslim, Jewish, and Christian folk musicians from all around the world, was looking for a new bass player. And this journalist said, I know a Muslim bass player who is new in Chicago and would be great for your ensemble. And so the violinist said, oh, wow, well, we need to give this person an audition. And so I showed up for the audition and was asked to read a traditional Arabic melody written in treble clef. And I was so grateful to every single time that the bass professor in the jazz department at the time, Jeremy Allen, forced me to read melodies in treble clef, even as a bass player. And so again, the rigor of that training coming in that moment for the audition. I landed the audition, I became part of the ensemble, and then over the course of playing with them, the director of that ensemble is friends with the director of an LGBTQ chorus in Seattle, who was composing, they were in the process of composing a song cycle all about queer refugees who have fled the Middle East. And the director of the Salam Shalom Music Project put my name to that group, knowing that I'm someone who does a lot of community group with LGBTQ Muslims. And so they asked me to compose a song for this song cycle. And then I started to ask about what were some of the stories behind this music, and it turns out this choir was involved in actually helping with an underground railroad for queer people who are fleeing the Middle East. And so in addition to writing this song for them, I said, sign me up for the rest. I want to work with this Underground Railroad as well. and I have been long after the song was composed. And I think that story, with all the different twists and turns and chance meetings and having a skill that your professors drilled into you during music school and maintaining relationships and connections, and who is your community and what is your standing in that community, what kind of work do you do other than just being a musician, that's how my life in Chicago has worked. Every single thing that I've done in Chicago has involved those kinds of combinations of different factors and influences.
Thank you so much. All right, we're going to open it up for questions. Who has a question? Raise your hand, unmute, put it in the chat. Elena and Lynn, I want to start off by, you both talked very specifically about expanding your skill sets. And Lynn, you were specific about how some relationships have led to you expanding networks and opportunities. Could you both speak just a little bit more about steps that you took, like what skills you recognized you needed to develop, or how you recognized you needed to diversify a little bit, and what were those steps you took to diversify?
Sure. So I can speak a little more about the audio recording aspect of things, because I want, especially now in this time of the virus, I want to keep collaborating with people, and being able to do that, like being able to record yourself, means technically you can do it anywhere you want remotely. Yeah, so I'm lucky to have like a network of people who are good at recording themselves, and I found myself relying on them far too much. So I took steps to be like, okay, what do you do? But let me write it down and then try to do it myself. And if I have questions, I'll come back to you. But really just like trying to gain courage to do more things myself now that I have time to do them specifically, I guess. I don't know if that helps.
We have go ahead, Lynn.
Oh, I was just going to say, very similar to Elena, that I feel like certain things became very obvious as, oh, this would be really useful as a skill for me to have in this particular opportunity or this particular relationship. I think one of the things that has been a big shift for me in Chicago is using the training that I got from the Jacobs School in composition and songwriting and things like that, and putting it towards production, and being a useful collaborator in producing, especially when I'm asked to maybe consult or add bass in various different hip-hop scenes in Chicago, and needing some more technical knowledge of how to give useful thoughts or considerations on song structure or composition or things like that, but in more of the realm of production, and just feeling like it was important enough to speak the same language as the people that I was collaborating with in that way, to teach myself more about what softwares are people using, what production tools are people using, and so that we meet in the middle of speaking the same language. And I think the more relationships that you have, the more projects you have, the more it becomes very obvious, oh wow, this would be really useful for me to learn.
That's great, thank you. Jameson's put a great question into the chat, and I don't know if you're there yet already, but I know for a fact you're headed to Chicago, right? Yep.
I'm here.
Are you there already? Good
Yeah,
for you.
I'm here.
Go ahead, ask your question, Jameson.
Okay, so first of all, hi, I'm Jameson. Nice to meet you. I'm a drummer. I'm a composer. Just graduated from IU. Now I'm in Chicago. Yeah, right. And I'm just curious, for those of you, particularly for the more recent graduates, like if you had any non-music related jobs when you got there, and like if you could discuss that period, and then also if you were able to land some sort of like music job, what like finally started working in terms of applications or the networking, or what did you change to figure it out? Not all at once.
Everybody's super polite. Charles, when you first got there, you went straight into arts administration?
I did. So I grew up in the western suburbs, so I was able to live with my parents as I was job searching. In all honesty, it took me 6 months to find my first full-time job. And that was after applying to, I would say, 50, 60 different organizations, actually throughout the country. So I went on interviews a lot. And I would say that going through the interview process multiple times is so helpful and allows you to polish those skills, because interviewing, at least in my experience, was nothing I really had to do very frequently before I started looking for a full-time job. So there are so many online resources that you can find about sample interview questions and techniques that you can use for interviewing. And really, practicing with your friends, answering those questions, making sure that other people have eyes on your application materials. So sending it to a friend or a mentor, making sure that they think it's good, it's polished. And just those second pair of eyes is really helpful before you send things off. I really like to say that persistence is key. You can't be deterred by rejections. I'm sure it's the same when you're auditioning for orchestras or different ensembles. Persistence is so important.
James, and I didn't answer first because I'm the opposite of the recent alumnus on this call, but because I teach at DePaul, I see very clearly what my college-age students, who are probably about your age, are doing, and I can only say that it's incredibly common to have a non-music related job. Some of them are lucky to do enough gigs on the side to sort of put together with what they actually are wanting to do and saving time to practice and that type of thing. But there's definitely no shame in having a job as a barista or as anything else you can find. And it's just an incredibly common thing to sort of bridge I don't know what to call the period between graduating from school and when your ambitions actually line up, but everybody has to navigate it somehow, and there's no one right or wrong way to do it.
Yeah, I was going to say I was dog walking for the longest time to make ends meet. So yeah, no shame in it. I'm still trying to make landing the music related job fit for me all the time. So it's a process.
Certainly. I've always had a portfolio approach to my life in Chicago. I've never had what I would consider to be a day job that was non-music related, but there have been small chunks of work that I've done that have been non-music related that have supported also kind of small and movable pieces of my musical life. So it's kind of a crazy patchwork in my particular life. But honestly, again, because of the importance of community in everything that I do, the non-music related jobs that I do serve that purpose as well. They are instrumental in just living within community and having connections that I support and that support me. And so having a non-music related job can have benefits in myriad ways beyond just financial stability as well. But like, who are your people in Chicago, and how are you living together, especially during a time like this? And so I would encourage people to try to find, if they need something non-music related, to figure out something that feeds you in multiple ways, and that also represents your involvement in a particular neighborhood or a community that you're living in.
Awesome, thank you.
And Maddie's going to put into the chat the names of the employment and placement agencies that she mentioned before, because those are other pairs of ears and eyes that can help you identify temporary pay the rent sorts of opportunities while you're building that performance career. Additional questions? Anything else pressing?
Hey, Joni, I also wanted to throw out, so the IU Alumni Association is also working on building out a platform that will be kind of a jobs board specific to different areas of the country. And so as that moves forward, we're hoping to be able to publicize that for alumni who are looking to relocate to Chicago. We get a lot of questions from individuals who are interested in moving to the area and are kind of looking for that IU specific, Chicago specific job board. So that's something that's being built out by IUAA. It's not quite ready yet, but we're hoping to be able to help push that out when it becomes available, because we think it'll be really helpful.
That's great. Thank you, Bob. I think we'll continue to monitor the chat for additional questions, but let's just go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room, and let's specifically talk about COVID-19. Let's hear from our panelists about the impact of that and maybe some predictions. What do you see? What do you see opening up? How do you see that this is going to change how you do what you do?
All right, I'll dive in. As far as the CSO half of my professional life, the orchestra hasn't played a concert since March, and we've been reluctant to cancel things, but obviously as it becomes apparent that we weren't going to open our season next month as planned, we have canceled those concerts as they were previously announced. And as of now, Charles, I know, can speak to this from his end as well, but as of now, we're just sort of waiting to hear what we will be able to put together and what form it'll take, because we are very much beholden to the state and civic requirements on how many people can be in one place at one time. And currently, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's 50 people, which, beyond putting a chamber orchestra on the stage, doesn't allow much room for a live audience. So I know that our administration and staff are hard at work crunching all kinds of scenarios about how many people can be in the hall and on the stage, and what we could record and in what way we could put it out to the public virtually. So a lot of that is very much up in the air at the moment. My teaching, on the other hand, is continuing. DePaul was very quick at shifting to an online model for the spring quarter. So we're all, like it or not, very used to teaching lessons online. I've continued to teach most of my students through this summer because almost all summer music festivals have been canceled or were canceled. And DePaul will be going back with kind of a hybrid model where the faculty and students together, depending on the size of the class, will decide whether things are in person in a very sterile, socially distant way, or online. So a couple of aspects of the field that seem to be coming back to life, besides the teaching, obviously, are small groups of various kinds that are able to play in, be more nimble, play in smaller spaces for smaller audiences. So I see evidence of a bit of chamber music happening around town. So yeah, I guess that's the general picture, but it's very much a wait and see attitude, as we all know.
Yeah, I would add that it's really been a time of creativity and just a sense of evolving, of never being able to put your finger right exactly on what's going to happen a month from now. So it's like Brand said, it's been a time of nimbleness, creativity, And I agree, like small chamber performances are going to come back much sooner than we're able to present the entire Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Personally, I still play. I'm in a community orchestra. I just play for fun, and the financial impact of what's going on has just been so great. We've pretty much just mothballed our small organization, and we've got plans to put together some performances in public parks, putting together string trios and quartets and things like that, just to make sure everyone's still playing and keeping their skills sharp. And as far as the administrative side of the symphony goes, we're really counting on no earned revenue, so revenue from ticket sales. That's what we've planned for the entire season. And so it makes my job and my department's job in fundraising that much more critical, because we're still hoping and working towards securing support from all of our regular annual donors, so that we can make it through and come back in a completely normal atmosphere once this is all over.
I just want to put out there, has anyone tried Jam Kazam or Jack Trip? They're two like video, whatever, like what is Zoom, whatever you call Zoom. They're like that, but they have less latency. So you're supposed to be able to play in real time with other musicians. And I've been looking into that, but wondered if anyone else had heard of those or tried them.
I know that the Jacobs School of Music has been looking into that quite a bit as well. The jazz department, the audio engineering department, they've been looking at Jack Trap and various other platforms to be able to create this sort of simultaneous performance scenario, but it's still not quite there. I don't think that they've got to the point where the latency is so small that it makes it possible for people to actually simultaneously perform in different places. But it's getting close. I don't know whether it'll ever get there.
Yeah, I hope so.
I'm also really interested to hear from everybody about how this challenge of COVID-19 is spurring. I mean, you spoke quite a bit about how you're learning how to do recording, and I would imagine even the Chicago Symphony is really thinking a lot about its relationship with the world, and how beyond going back to what was before, this crisis that we're in is opening up questions and giving us opportunities to explore perhaps different ways of engaging with the world as creators, as musicians, as artists, as people who tell stories in communities. Just how are you all doing with the idea of the future?
I think if you lay on top of COVID the racial unrest and the idea of the fact that everyone now seems aware of in our field, the paths that have led us to where we are and where we've fallen short in terms of equity and inclusion. It's, as Charles said, it's really whether we like it or not, it's a juncture to just stop and look at what directions we should be going in the future. And some of them that we may have taken for granted up until now may be far less of a priority going forward. So obviously the CSO is a large organization, so by definition, a battleship doesn't turn 90 degrees on a dime. So I found some inspiration actually looking at what smaller organizations have already been able to do with their programming and their personnel and just the communities they interact with in the city. I know the CSO has a commitment to following suit. It may take us a bit longer as an organization to get there, but I know that we will, and it's definitely a priority.
That's great. The Jacobs School of Music has been going through such deep thinking over the past 3 months about its entire identity, partly because of COVID, but even more now about diversity inclusion, and what are we as an organization responsible for teaching and propelling the music world hopefully into the future. So I don't know if anybody else has ideas of how this world of difficulty that we're living through right now really is opening up opportunity and possibility.
I have one thought to share about that, which is that I think it's accurate what some of the other panelists have said of many IU alumni moving to some of the specific neighborhoods that were mentioned at the beginning. I think that historically has been true. I would also like to point out that all of these neighborhoods are on the north side. All of these neighborhoods are heavily gentrified, and that arts organizations and art industry has historically played a role
Sounds like
in these neighborhoods. And I would just like to give a shout out to the south and west sides of Chicago, and that now is really a time to consider what would it be like to live on the west and south sides. What do you have to offer to collective survival in these neighborhoods? Who are your connections, and what are things that you can offer? Again, if you, especially if you are going to need some sort of job other than music, what is it that could connect you to some of these other neighborhoods or communities that you could build meaningful relationships? And that music can be a part of that. Music can be an incredible part of trust building, especially in difficult times like these. And I'd just like to say that I live on the west side, and it's been really, really rough. And it's been life or death situations constantly in so many ways, because Chicago is one of the most segregated and unequal major cities in the US, and that is blatant and ever present especially on the west and south sides. And to be perfectly honest, I have kind of retreated from even attempting to make music the focus of my life. I still have some online students, and I have this one random once-a-week job clerking for an online auction, of all things. But then other than that, what music has meant is just realizing how much trust I have built with so many people in the city through music, and how even though we're not able to make music together a lot, the trust of those relationships has been vital in the life or death situations that have constantly presented themselves, and how we have, even though we have to be distant, have in a lot of ways taken steps closer to one another through those relationships and through those trust, through that trust to survive, especially in the hardest places in the city. And so I continue to make music and continue to nurture my relationships with musicians, mostly because I'm human and it helps with human trust and human survival, not because at the moment I'm expecting that music will pay all my bills. But to me, that's worth it during this time, and I see those relationships paying off.
Oh, that's amazing. And, you know, something else that seems to be part of this shift that's going, there's so many shifts on so many different levels, but it seems like in the past, you know, so over the past 30, 40 years, the priority for musicians, professionally trained musicians, was to find a way to get into the profession, sort of a pre-existing ecosystem of activity, much like these major organizations such as the Chicago Symphony or others. And that was that was like, you know, the 90% priority. And the equation seems to have shifted a lot now over the past 10, 15 years, where that still exists. And certainly the rigor of your education and the training and what have you get out of something like the Jacobs School of Music is so key. And yet there's this sort of element of creating your opportunities now that seems to be so much more prominent. You know, Brad, even you were talking, I was very interested to hear about how, as a musician, you feel that if you only relied on your Chicago Symphony position, it would feel somehow less satisfying or less personally meaningful than if you proactively create opportunities for yourself and connect and become a board member of a not-for-profit organization and go out there and help the cultural industry sort of build. And Lynn, you know, I'm so touched by your connection to community, because it seems to me that so much of what we lost in the professionalization of music was that very tangible, acute sense of connection to community. And it seems like we're revisiting that now. And in a place like Chicago, I would imagine that from all of your perspectives, you're experiencing this new era in which music and the musical arts really has to matter to a community to survive. And what you do as musicians, what you do as artists, what you do as professionals is so much connected to finding that future together rather than simply relying on the models of the past.
When I got here to join the CSO, I was aware that I was taking a job that was considered, the holy grail in the field of orchestral playing. And I then and do consider myself so lucky. But as I look back on it now, I think, my gosh, you took one of the most traditional paths you could have possibly taken. It's an organization that's more than a century old. And not that that's a bad thing, but it's just been, as you say, really interesting just in the last 20 years to see how the entire definition of what it means to have success as a professional musician can be. And it certainly played out across the world, the country, and on a smaller level, just right here in Chicago.
Anybody else with thoughts?
I have a thought to add back to the question about newer grads from Jameson, newer grads working in a non-performing arts background. I was thinking about this as I've been listening to the panelists, and a thought was getting into, maybe if there's an organization that you're really interested in getting into as a performing artist, but you need a stepping stone to get there. I'm wondering if anyone has done this, or if you consider maybe joining in an administrative capacity, the organization, if there's an opportunity to. So getting in that way, again, being able to get a source of income, and then building on those connections there and being able to work up to that performing artist status within the organization. So I don't know if that's a possibility, if people have looked into that, but it was a thought that had come to mind as another kind of avenue into an organization.
I have another question that's actually pretty related to that. And earlier we were talking about how it's good to get those other jobs, non-music related jobs, because you start to build skills that are going to help you do the music things. And I was wondering, we have such an awesome array of people here, people who are hiring, people who have been doing it for years, people who just got here. And I was wondering if I could get some of the different perspectives on, like, okay, what are some of those skills that I need to build? Like, okay, I got to get a non-music job. So do I need to get the non-music job that helps me with people skills? Do I need to get the non-music job that helps me, reach out to find funding? And I was just wondering if people could throw out some ideas about that.
I'll throw out that I'm a music ed undergrad graduate from IU, but I found myself in the world of acoustics consulting and here in Chicago, and we hire musicians as our admin staff, and when we have occasion to be commissioning a new room that we're building, we'll have a couple of our opera singers come and test the room out when we're testing new finishes, new surfaces. We've had, staff who have worked in professional capacities work with us to develop those materials. So there's all sorts of adjacent sort of industries that I'd encourage new grads to think about as they're finding their way in the music world.
I have something in kind of a very different direction, which is learn how to grow food. Especially if you live in, in a neighborhood that is historically disenfranchised, that is a food desert. There's a lot of urban agriculture going on. There's a lot of community gardens that often hire, and they really come in handy. Both the connections of like participating in something that is literally feeding you and your neighbors, getting a little bit of income, and then just being deeply involved in something that is for everyone, that contributes to the survival of everyone. That's something that I've done most of the time of living here. I had some experience with that. I worked at a Hilltop Gardens in Bloomington for 6 years while I lived there. But I immediately started working at the one community garden in my neighborhood, which is otherwise a big food desert. And it's been really rewarding, and people who work there also develop skills to then kind of guerrilla grow food in abandoned lots and their own patios and things like that. And I think it's a great thing for musicians to be a part of too.
I'd say that, you know, maybe above of the things you mentioned, Jameson, people skills is the one that's sort of the umbrella that contains the ingredients for success at all of the others, unless you're going to be the guy who sits in your basement and codes on a computer with empty pizza boxes everywhere, which probably you're not. Anything other than that, you know, Charles will definitely, you know, he works in this area of our organization, which is, you know, the ability to interact successfully with people and to bring new people into your circle and to be open to that. Just the sort of human dynamics element of things is just, it's so important. And so if you're speaking about non-music jobs or other things that are going to give you experience, so I feel like sometimes when we think about our careers, we fail to make or to recognize parallels and sort of overlaps across disciplines and how one thing can really affect something else, and we put things in silos or in separate areas somehow. And so I think, you know, if you might have success just even thinking back over your musical experiences or your personal experiences to this point and see what you think you have uniquely to offer, maybe not necessarily musically, what you and only you can bring to a situation, whether it's community gardening, whether it's you know, putting together a jazz group, or looking for, you know, just meeting people and having them take an interest in you. There are many, Chicago's a big enough city that there's so many people in town who are lovers of the arts and who don't know any performers and are so anxious for the opportunity in a good way to even get to know somebody who's on the stage. And I've formed some really meaningful friendships unexpectedly just by being not closed to it, but, you know, open to it. And I've only known you for 2 seconds, but you seem affable and gregarious. So, you know, use those qualities, you know, when you interact with others, and it'll only help.
Thank you.
I'm going to put on my career coaching hat for like 2 seconds and just say that young musicians forget, because you're so focused on your developing as a musician, that you forget how incredibly trained you are. You're literally trained to listen. You're self-directed. You spend long periods of time in a practice room by yourself and then transition into a group where you function in harmony, literally in harmony with all the people around you. Those are skills that every supervisor in the world wants. You take direction really well. You learn really fast. So people like Maddie and like Bob and like Rob, who hire people and supervise people, are really great people to connect with in terms of broadening how you think about yourself and how you think about the skills that you actually bring to music and non-music positions. Other questions? We've got a couple of minutes here.
I have a question out of curiosity. Is there a program specific to Chicago for new graduates who are interested in moving to Chicago and connecting them with a Jacobs alumni? Is there like a liaising program that established that could be a good resource to point the new graduates to? I know this is a great tool, see some faces, some names, and have an idea of people to reach out to after this. So that's a great start, but is there a formal program or offering available?
So we don't have a formal one in the Jacobs School of Music, but we are always on the lookout for ways to help students network into various communities, especially in the region, Indianapolis, Chicago, and then obviously New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Nashville. But I know that we are always looking for a way to sort of consolidate that into a program of some kind. So hopefully that'll happen sometime soon. The thing that we're doing most of all is to try and get our students to join LinkedIn, because the Jacobs School of Music has a growing LinkedIn page that is very powerful and just a wonderful resource for anybody who wants to know about who's where in a particular community.
And I'll just throw out that we're always looking to find ways to connect alumni, not only with the chapter, but with each other. So to whatever extent we can be helpful to help facilitate that. We currently don't have any Jacobs School alumni as part of our board. And our Arts and Culture Committee wants to do more of those kinds of things. So to whatever extent we can be helpful in trying to set up a network or get you connected. I think, Lynn, to the point you had brought up before, kind of about where we're representative, I think a lot of it is because those are the people that have kind of raised their hands to say, we want to be involved, what can we do? And we don't really have good visibility on alumni that are living on the west side and the south side of the city. We'd love to be able to help build that out and be able to get people connected. Because if we can't see it, we can't really help to build a program around it or help to build connections. So to whatever extent we can help to make those connections and facilitate that, we're happy to do that.
Well, with our remaining couple of minutes here, I'd just like to provide an opportunity for a round robin if there's any final thoughts from anyone that's on the call and from our panelists.
Well, I would just like to say that if you are interested in getting into arts administration, I'd be happy to talk with you either virtually over the phone, a Zoom, or if you're willing to meet for coffee somewhere or meet in a park, I'm happy to chat and share my experiences, go into a little bit more detail.
That's a great offer. Great offer. I would take that, Jameson. Yep.
Anything else?
I would also just like to say that I'm available for any conversations continuing from this. I'm around. Hit me up. I'm always down to connect with people. And even though there's no formal program, I hope that, especially during this particularly unusual time, we keep connecting with each other in all these various different ways.
And likewise, if there are any, I know that Lynn and I have already been speaking about the possibility of a Chicago project coming to Bloomington, but if there's any way that we could create this connection between Bloomington and Chicago in an artistic way as well, that would be fantastic, because that, building relationships through artistic endeavors, through artistic collaborations, opens up opportunities and possibilities. I love the story about the friend of yours, Lynn, who was on a train and just happened to hear about an opportunity for a double bass player. That happens all the time. So the more of the links we can make between Bloomington and Chicago, the better.
Anything else for the good of the order? I just want to thank everyone. I want to thank our panelists so much for taking the time today to log on here and speak from your heart and share your personal and professional experiences. I want to thank all of our folks on Facebook Live that have been tuning in, all of the participants that joined us here on Zoom. Certainly a shout out to our own Jacobs Alumni Affairs Office. And a great big thank you to the Chicago chapter of the IU Alumni Association for your support. We appreciate it so much. Thank you, everyone.